Hello, and welcome to Encouraging Leadership, conversations that mobilize today's women leaders, with your host, Ann Miner. Meet leaders who share their observations, knowledge, insight, and perspectives to mobilize you to apply your own leadership in business and in life. Here's your host, Ann Miner.
Welcome to Encouraging Leadership, conversations to mobilize today's women leaders. Welcome, and here we are today with another fabulous guest. Linda Hasenfratz is the Chief Executive Officer of Linamar Corporation, a diversified global manufacturing company of highly engineered products powering vehicles, motion, work, and lives. Linda joined her father's company in 1990 and worked her way up from the ground floor, experiencing all aspects of the business, including running a machine, engineering, and operations management. Since she stepped into the Chief Executive Officer role, Linda has grown the company from an $800 million enterprise to over a $5.3 billion company. Linda's desire to see women progress in business to the top level of industry prompted her to participate in two key initiatives. She sits on the Board of Advisors for Catalyst Canada and the Government Council Women on Boards Advisory Council since 2013. Linda, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Now let's just dive right in. We have, limited time together, and why don't we start off with, how did you come to be leader in your organization? We heard that you started at the ground floor and worked your way up, but how did you actually make that leap into leadership?
Well, I guess because it wasn't really a leap, it was more of a step-by-step approach. I mean, like anything, I think you're most successful if you take things one step at a time. So, as you point out, I did start out on the shop floor, learning the basics of our business, which I think is really critical for anyone to do, is to understand the basics of how a business works, what it's all about, and I think also importantly learn about what it's like to do that job and a whole bunch of other jobs as well. And, I think that taught me respect for our people and for the roles that they play. It taught me, as I moved through the organization into various roles in quality and engineering and accounting and estimating and, almost every different area of the company, taught me a little bit about seeing the business from that perspective, about being in that seat. What's that mean? What are the challenges? And I think that as I then moved into leadership and running my own plant, it gave me a great perspective on how that whole team sort of gels together, which was really invaluable.
I completely agree with that. In fact, in my own career, I too began from the ground floor and found that when I was in the leadership position and people came with challenges or obstacles, I had a much better understanding of even the language they were using. I understood, as I'm sure you did, what the task was, what the tools were that they used, and what they were actually talking about, which at a later stage in my career, when we talk about technological advances and that department called IT, I found that I needed to dive in there too, and because of course that didn't exist when I started my career, but I had to dive in there too and get to understand their language. Otherwise, I was baffled. So, as a leader, I can see that we've followed similar paths, and I appreciate that. This need to understand how the business actually works and what people's experience is puts you in a very privileged position when it comes to really moving your business forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, as I say, I think it was invaluable for me, and in fact, it is a method of training and development for running a plant that we're actively utilizing today to train young leaders at Linamar. We have a program we call LEAP. We're big on acronyms at Linamar. It stands for the Linamar Entrepreneurial Advancement Program. And we handpick 3, 4, maybe 5 at the most, but typically less than that, people per year, and put them through exactly the same kind of program that I was in, moving around from into different disciplines, different plants, and now that we're international, different countries, to get that same sort of broad-based viewpoint. And we do that over sort of 3, 4, 5 years, and then we feel like they're well positioned now to step into a management role and ultimately run a plant. So I think it's a great program and is really helping us to form our leaders for tomorrow.
And do you find that you need to treat women in your organization any differently? Do you have a specialized track for women into leadership?
Well, we don't have a specialized track, although LEAP is a great way to take people from a lot of different disciplines and help shape them into general managers. One of our leadsters is a woman, so I think it is a great avenue in itself. What we've tried to do at Linamar is create a real meritocracy, right? So people are being promoted based on great work, showing great initiative, passion, getting things done, making good decisions, being good communicators, caring about their people, all of those important sort of leadership traits. So, we're looking at that quite agnostically, whether it's women or men or people from a whole variety of different cultural backgrounds. If you look at our leaders across the organization, our management team, we've got a real mixed bag of people from all kinds of diverse backgrounds, as well as men and women. So our goal is to try to see proportionate representation, let's say, of women at every level. So, we're about 20% of our population overall is women. That means we would like to see women in management at every level also be around 20%, and that way we're ensuring a good proportionate level of representation, and we are achieving that.
Terrific. Well, I heard you use a very interesting term there, and a very important one from a how women lead differently perspective, and that is meritocracy. And for those listeners who may not have come across that term, maybe you would give us a definition, Linda.
Well, sure. I mean, it just means you get promoted based on merit, based on achievements, based on your track record, based on the leadership that we've seen demonstrated. So, I think that it's important to have that kind of a culture. And, it's a culture we've always had. It's a culture that was, fostered and created by my father when he started the company 50 years ago. He doesn't see, colors and genders and all of that. He just sees, great performance, and, that person's great, and we should be developing them and promoting them. And that perspective is permeated throughout the company, is a big part of our culture, and is why you see that kind of merit-based approach to promotion in the company.
Mm-hmm. And it's very unusual, as we know, that one of the reasons that we find women are not being advanced is not so much a lack of competence. It's not even necessarily a lack of confidence. It's a perception that they're not as visible, perhaps, or not as self-promoting as perhaps they could be or should be, and that organizations often don't base their decisions on merit, but base their decisions on advancement, on who appears to be the most visible in terms of their achievements. And this is one of the things that I think women find, a bit of a hurdle for them in many organizations.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's certainly you need to, have self-confidence. I mean, if you are good at what you do, then you're going to be naturally self-confident, right? And I think that sort of shines through, and people see that, and want to see you advance and take on new opportunities. I mean, we all win when we promote our best talent. So that seems like a no-brainer to pick the best people who are doing the best job to promote and continue to lead and help grow the company.
Mhm. Now, with a global operation, do you find that you need to lead differently from one continent or one country to the other?
Well, of course. I mean, cultures are different. People react differently in different countries, and just like within your own team. I mean, all the people on my team I don't manage the same way, right? I mean, everybody's a little bit different, and different things appeal to them. So, the way that I might talk to and try and motivate one person can be totally different to how I try to motivate someone else, and that's very much true as well when you look internationally. I mean, I think to work successfully with people, you need to have a good sense for what motivates them, what they like, how they like to approach a problem or a situation, and then amend your own talking points and whatnot to work with that. I mean, that's how you reach people, is by understanding them and what motivates them, no matter where they are in the world. So, getting a good sense for the different cultures of the countries that we operate in is important, and certainly it's something that we do whenever we go to a new region, is try and spend a bit of time understanding the culture, understanding, how people think. Let's learn a little bit about how they learn, about, the social, fiber of that country and what that feels like, because, there's definitely different ways of doing business and the way people interact in other countries. I mean, in Asia, for instance, respect for each other and, sort of saving face is really critical. So, you're going to be much more careful about what you say to somebody in front of someone else, whereas in North America, people tend to be a little more blunt. So, and so you need to adjust that. So, if you're, very blunt and whatnot, then, you're going to need to tone that down a little bit, or you're going to have trouble when you go to China, where people, would not react well to the same kind of bluntness. And I think also you need to learn to interpret a little bit things you're hearing, and mannerisms and things like that, and what that means, because again, that can be very different country to country. In some countries, when they say, we will try to do that, or that could be possible. If you say that in Canada or the U.S., it means it could be possible, right? We could do that. If you hear that in Mexico, it means there's no way ever that's going to happen. So you need to learn to pick up on some of those cues of what that really means when you hear that.
So how do you transfer that knowledge that you've gathered to the employees in your LEAP program?
Well, I mean, they would experience it, if when they would go into an international posting. So, like, we try and put them into a position for, it depends, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. It depends on what the job is and how much learning they need. If they've, if it's a totally new area to them, then they may need to spend a little bit more time there. And we try to make it a meaningful enough posting that, A, it's a real job. It's not them just sitting beside somebody and learning something. They're actually doing a role. and taking responsibility and accountability. So they need to be there for a long enough period of time. And when one of those postings is international, I mean, right away they're in a position to need to understand that culture, understand doing business there, what's that all about, and learn a little something about the diversity of people. And I think it's quite valuable because even when they come back, let's say to Canada, if they were from Canada originally, and work in one of our plants here, our plant populations are incredibly diverse. We've got all kinds of people from all over the world that have come to Canada and in one way or another have ended up working with us. So I think that it helps our people who have done international postings to appreciate that and learn to interact with people, within a facility, no matter where they are, because our world is increasingly blending. There's nothing homogeneous about the makeup of people in most of our facilities. We've got people from all over the place, and you need to understand how to manage that situation, and as we've been talking about, how to motivate people from all kinds of different cultures.
So are you preparing them before they go, or are you relying on them to have on-the-job kind of learn through the experience?
Yeah, I mean, the LEAP program is only one small aspect of our expat program, right? So I'm just going to talk broadly about when we send somebody off to another country. So, we do try to give them some cultural training, a little bit of advanced training around, what that country's like. And but really, I mean, you learn when you're immersed in it. I mean, that's when you learn a language. That's when you learn about customs and culture, and is by living there. You can get a bit of insight at the outset, but really, you really learn about it when you're there. So, we try and support them as much as we can. But I mean, you put them out there and let them learn and make mistakes, and what works and what doesn't work, and they work their way through it. They don't need their hands held, or we wouldn't have picked them.
Right, exactly. So, as you look at your own experience, were there things or paths that you went down that didn't prove to serve you, that you warn people of or share your experience that would help them avoid potholes, or I often refer to them as cow patties myself, but the mistakes or the missteps that we've made that have maybe served us along the way to develop into the leader that we are?
But don't you think it's so important what you just said? The mistakes that you learn along the way are what develop us into the leaders that we are. I mean, you learn from mistakes. You're not going to do everything right every time, throughout your life. You're gonna make some mistakes, but you learn from them. You take, and often those lessons are, long-term lessons that, are mistakes you're never going to make again. So you can't shield, people from never making a mistake. I mean, of course, there's advice you can give, and we should be teaching and mentoring our future leaders to teach them about, what we've learned. So, we can pass on those lessons, but without doubt, they're going to, make mistakes of their own and learn from it. And we can't, preempt every one of those lessons and potential mines that they may step on, but we can impart as much knowledge as we can about the mistakes that we've made and what we learned from those, and then try and arm them with enough knowledge and capability of assessing situations and how to deal with things to be able to handle their own challenging situations.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite lesson that you share?
I mean, there's all kinds of things I've learned along the way about, as we've talked about, working with a team and building a strong team around you. I don't think that's a lesson I've learned because I've messed up with team, but of course we all make mistakes in picking people. So those are important lessons, and I think listening to I recall interviewing people and having little red flags pop up during the interview that I thought, I'm surprised that person would say that, and ignoring those little red flags and hiring that person. And sure enough, if something comes up in an interview, you can bet that when people are on their best behavior, you can bet that it's going to be an issue down the road. So that's a small lesson. But a bigger lesson, I think, for us at Linamar, we're a very fast-moving organization. We make decisions fast. We move quickly. We don't like to spend a lot of time on useless bureaucracy. I think that companies can really get weighed down by too many processes, too many reports, too many approvals, too many meetings that aren't really adding value. So we really try and push back on that, and we, as I say, move quickly and make decisions fast, and that's great in the operational sense and in a manufacturing company. And you need to make decisions fast and move quick and be agile. But by the same token, I think that a lesson I've learned is you can't apply that same rapid decision making to something that's more strategic in nature. So, I like to think of it as weighing the time that you take to make a decision should be proportionate to the consequence of that decision. So, if the consequences, within the next day or week, then by all means spend minutes on the decision. But if the consequence could be years, well, you should spend a little bit more time and a little bit more research and evaluate alternatives and really make sure that you're making the right decision. And I think there's been times where we've made rapid decisions on things that were more strategic in nature because it seemed like the right choice, and we're used to moving fast, and later regretted those decisions. So, I think that's a good lesson learned in itself, that that is a little bit particular to us in our organization, of being very fast and, rapid decision making, whereas I think a lot of companies are on the other end of the scale. They're trying to find ways to move faster, and we're trying to figure out how to slow down on certain things.
Well, certainly I can attest to your suspicion that other companies are trying to find ways to move faster and be more agile. Agile being an interesting word that covers a multitude of sins, I think, and put sins in quotes there, that, companies that are entrepreneurial like yours that move very rapidly are not faced with the same bureaucratic process of multiple levels of approvals, and can try things and, try that, see if it works, and if it doesn't, change. Try something different and move through that very quickly. Whereas in larger organizations, not necessarily larger, but those with a different culture, the more, process-driven culture, if you like, or more bureaucratic culture, that it takes so long to get approval to make a change that the opportunity in the marketplace might have already passed.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the individual that had that idea that was so energized by the possibilities has left because they were frustrated. So somewhere in between there, and I certainly don't have the magic formula, but somewhere in there, there is a balance. And I so appreciated your comment about, weighing the consequence against the time that you invest. We often talk about weighing the consequence against the money that you spend, but time is our most precious commodity. And your formula there sounds to me like a great piece of advice. I wonder, Linda, if you have any specific advice for women that aspire to lead? I appreciate that you are dealing with a very diverse population, and sounds like you've got not necessarily a formula, but certainly a huge appreciation of the need to adapt to people, to meet them where they are, depending on their cultural heritage. What would you say to women that are aspiring to leadership?
Well, I guess a few things. I would say don't be afraid to take a risk. Don't be afraid to take on a job that you might not feel 100% ready for. There's been jobs that I took on where I had to stretch, to really be ready and take that on. But if you've got a good, network of people around you that you can rely on for advice and for help, then you can do a lot more than you think you can. And so I would say that's an important piece of advice right there. So don't be afraid to take that job, to go after that promotion, to take on something that you don't 100% know how to do, because you can figure it out as you go. And as I say, ask for help and ask for advice. My father always told me, you don't have to have all the answers. You won't have all the answers to every question, but you should know who to call to ask and who to ask for advice. And people always like to help. Like, people like to give advice. So, if you develop a good network of people that, either within your organization or outside it or both, preferably, then you've got people you can call to get a little bit of advice and insight to help you, make good decisions and do the job that you're in. I would say, as we were talking about earlier, get a good variety of experience if you want to be a leader. It's good to be able to see the business from a lot of different perspectives. So, I think don't be afraid of taking that lateral move to learn a totally different area, because that will really, help round you as a leader and give you great perspective to take on higher levels of leadership. And I think lastly, sometimes you hear women leaders say, you can't have it all. Sure you can. Who the heck said that? People who don't want all those other aspects of life. I mean, I have a family. I have 4 children. I have the business. I have charitable things I do, whatever. I mean, you find time for the things that you want in life. So don't ever take the advice that you can't do that. Yes, you can. You can do whatever you want to do. You find the time. You find a way. Okay, other bits might shrink in your life if you've got a lot going on in a few areas, and some things might shrink a little, and then as time opens up, they can expand back out. So I come back to, I think you can do a lot more than you think you can, and you just find a way and do it, because there's a lot to get out of life, whether it be in your career or in your family or in supporting your community, and you should go after those things and do the things that you want, and have a life that you feel like you're achieving something and you're fulfilled and you're happy, and don't let somebody tell you that you can't do something, because I think you can.
What a wonderful way to end our show today. Linda, that was terrific advice. Listeners, don't let anyone tell you you can't. You decide for yourself. Tune in next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for more conversations to mobilize today's women leaders.
Thank you for listening to Encouraging Leadership. To learn more about our host, Ann Miner, and the Acacia Institute, please visit acaciainstitute.com. Join us next week at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, for more Encouraging Leadership. In the meantime, be courageous.